Well, hey, gang, and welcome back to the Joy of Wrenching. I'm your friendly neighborhood mechanic, and of course, today in the shop, we have a new vehicle. This one is a 2021 Ranger XP1000. Doesn't that just sound tough? But this thing has about 105 hours on it. And when you have one of these little things, they tell you that you need to get a 100-hour service. And so we're going to do the 100-hour service on this Ranger XP today, which includes, and come take a look at what we got for that. That includes an oil change, a change for our front differential fluid, and a change for our transmission fluid. And then we're going to go through all the different systems of the vehicle and look for any problems. So come along and let's have some fun together. So when we want to do a 100-hour service on one of these little side-by-sides or UTVs, whatever, what do you call them? Anyways, what we want to do is we want to go through all the different systems and just make sure that everything's working right and nothing's too low on fluids. And where I want to start today is with our coolant. And now if you have one of these, you know how to open the hood, but come see, I'll show you. Got these little tabs up here, and all you got to do is a quarter turn, and then you can pick up on the back of it. Now this one's got some kind of a mount for a light or something right here. You just pick up on the back of the hood and slide it forward. Now on this one, because of these mounts, you can probably squeeze it out that way, but I'm going to go backwards just to get out of there. And now we have access inside here, so come take a look. This is where the coolant goes for this vehicle. And as you can see, it says coolant, and it's got a minimum line and a maximum line. And the coolant in this thing, if you look right over here in this hose, this is where the radiator is, and we could open that, but we know that that's going to be full of coolant because look right here. You see that green coolant in that line? Well, we ought to see green coolant somewhere between these two lines, and it's a little bit low. So that's the first thing we're going to do on this 100-hour service is we're going to put some coolant in there and get that back up in that happy little range right between that minimum and max. Now, the next thing that we want to take a look at is our brakes on this thing. This is obviously a farm vehicle. It's out there rolling over the hills up and down and crawling over rocks and dodging cows and all those fun things. And so we want to make sure that it's safe. And so on the brakes for these things, all you got to do is just take off the wheels. They have 4 lug nuts. They're size 3/4. And I've gone ahead and loosened those up for you. Take this down here and come take a look at what we're going to look at now. All right, so here's where our brakes are on the front, and you can turn it by hand and you can see this is your rotor, and you just want to make sure that that rotor, if we look at it from the front right here, you want to make sure that as we spin that rotor, it's not bent out of shape, wiggling back and forth as we turn it around and around. The other thing we want to look at is the thickness of the brake pads. So that is going to be the distance between this metal part of the back of the plate and the rotor. You want to make sure that there's still some brake pad material in there and that it's similar thickness on the front side of the rotor and back here on the back side of the rotor, and these look good. And so you just go around the car, or the UTV or side-by-side in this case, go around and check all 4 corners and make sure that the brakes are doing well. Oh, one more thing before we go too far. Look right here, guys. Wetness is something that you want to always look for, because wetness on a vehicle is an indication there's a leak. And so we're going to look at these brake lines. So come back over here and take a look. You see where this brake line connects? You want to follow that brake line all the way up as far as you can. See, I've got my hands here. And you just want to make sure that there's no tears in it. You know, this vehicle goes off-road a lot. And so you could see how easy it would be for a log or a stick or a rock or something to come in here and tear a hole in that brake line. And if that happens, all of a sudden you don't have brakes. So these look good, and I'm going to look at the rest. And while I'm in here, let me take you in here, and I want you to look at something else. The other thing we want to look for is we want to look at these rubber boots. You see that? These are the CV axle boots. You want to make sure, and you can turn it, you can turn the wheel and see that thing at 360 degrees. You can look at the inside and then also over here by the hub. And you want to make sure that that rubber boot isn't torn. If that gets torn, you can get a lot of mud and dirt and rocks inside of there, and that'll really mess up the bearings. There's another boot up here, and that's on the steering. And we want to make sure that it too is in good shape, and all of these look good. So we checked all the brake lines. Now we need to make sure that it's got brake fluid. So see, here's where your brake fluid reservoir is, and there's a line on the side of it that says minimum and one up here that says maximum. I've got the light behind it so you can see, hopefully you can see, there's fluid all the way up to the maximum line, and see how clear and good that looks? So we're in good shape there. But if that did get low, make sure that you use .4 brake fluid. So let's get into that the rest of that 100-hour service, and let's start by looking at our air filter, and that lives back here. So come over here. We're going to have to lift up our bed in order to get to it. So you just pull up on the handle here, and right inside of this box right over here is where our air filter lives. And to get inside of there, we just got to go and unclip all of these clips around it. So I'm going to go ahead and put you on the other side so that you can see that. Well, hopefully you'll be able to get a better view of our air box from that side there. But if you notice, look at me. Look at me. I'm in this tight little space right here. I can't hardly even maneuver. I can't get in there and do what I need to do. We need a little bit more space here. And luckily on these Polaris Rangers, they've got this little pin right here that we can pull. It's kind of like a grenade pin, I guess. But you can take this little pin out of here. What that does is it releases that shock. And look at this now. Oh, yeah. You want to make sure you don't lose that. So we're just going to put this back in here. Look at this now, guys. Look how much room I've got to work in this engine bay now. Again, you want to keep the joy in wrenching. And you want to be having that happy time. And having a little bit of elbow room sure makes me happy. How about you? All right, so let's get in here and let's see what this air filter looks like. It's been a while. Obviously, there's been a lot of dirt and dust sucked up into this area. So I'm curious to see what we're going to find on this air filter after 100 hours. And I don't think this fella has all I'm doing is unclipping the clips. And some of them you kind of got a feel for. There we go. I got her opened up. All right. Once you get well, I'll show you where these clips are. So you've got all these clips. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 clips up top. Once those are undone, this just swings down like this. And then you can kind of snake it out of there. So now come looky here. And you can actually see, our air filter there. We need to pull that thing out of there and take a look at it. See how it's attached. You can just make a little bit of a turn on it, quarter turn or so, and then it just slides back out of the way. There we go. Now let's see what's in there. That actually looks pretty clean, don't you think, guys? I mean, ooh, that thing will get you. There's a couple of little leaves here, but not anything bad at all. And definitely nothing. No mice, no mouses, no raccoons living up inside of there. So I think this one's going to be good to go. You want to be careful. You want to be careful with these guys. A lot of people will tell you take the compressed air and just really blow it out real good. And you know, if you're real careful, maybe you can get away with that. But a lot of times what people will do is they'll blow it so hard with high pressure air that it'll tear that paper inside of there. And then you got a hole. And all that dirt's just going to go straight past this thing and get ingested in your motor. And that's a bad thing. So this thing's checked out, nice and clean. So we'll go ahead and put it right back in. So all you got to do is just slide it down like this. Put it inside. And see it just fits over this little snorkel right there. And you don't have to worry about twisting it or anything like that. You can just wiggle it and push it on there and it'll stay there. And now we're going to put our lid back in. That's the bottom with all the little teeth. And there's little places where these teeth fit in. So we're going to just take this in here like so, put the teeth down in the bottom, and then it'll swing up in place. And it doesn't really matter which one of these you do first. Just make sure you get all 5 of these clips. Well, that air filter really looked good. So while we're under here and we got all this elbow room, let's go ahead and look at these spark plugs. So come over here, I'll show you how to do that. And we just want to check them out. All you got to do is just pull up on these spark plug boots. Oh, sometimes they get stuck on there a little bit, but no big deal. And look down in there. You'll see that spark plug. That's where he lives. And we want to get in there with our 5/8 spark plug, regular old size spark plug wrench. Break it loose, and then we'll just spin her out and take a look at it. I wonder what that's going to look like. Again, this thing has only got 100 hours, so it shouldn't look too bad. Oh, look at there. See that porcelain? Nice and bright and white, and there's no oil. There's no evidence of anything been burning in here. Everything here looks really, really good. That electrode is still real nice and sharp. So we're going to go ahead and reuse these plugs. I didn't expect that they would need to be changed. Now, the manufacturer, sometimes they'll tell you that you need a whole lot of things that you don't need. So be careful, guys. You gotta trust but verify, as they say. And so in this case, these plugs, or at least this one here, is good to go. And I'll check the next one here in a second. Well, those spark plugs look almost brand new. So let's go ahead and put our boots back on. All you gotta do is just tighten that spark plug deck down. Doesn't have to be gorilla tight, don't worry. Just tighten and snug it back up. Then you put the boot back in, and then you push it down, and you'll hear and feel that satisfying click. And that's how you know that that spark plug boot is reattached to the spark plug. Now we can move on and do the oil. Well, it's time to do that oil. So come on underneath here. This is the back of the vehicle, and you'll see there's a lot of there's a lot of protection, because again, these are off-road vehicles and they don't want the engine and all this stuff to be tore up. So they put these belly pans on, but they've got a lot of holes in them that give you access. And this one right here, you see how it's shaped. So we're right past the cab. You'll see there's a triangle shaped hole here, and there's the oil drain plug right there. And all you got to do is put a 6 millimeter Allen key in there and break that thing loose. Now I'm going to, as is my custom, I'm going to catch all the oil in this bucket here so that I know what it looks like and also how much was in the vehicle. It doesn't really matter what kind of vehicle I'm working on. I like to do that. And that helps a lot of times with knowing how much to put back in too. But we're going to, oh wow. That doesn't look too bad, does it, guys? Look at that. It doesn't look too dirty at all. And again, this is just 100 hours or so. And here's our oil drain plug. Now you may have heard that clunk sound. There's a copper washer that goes on this drain plug that is missing. And it's not stuck right up here on that aluminum of the oil drain pan either. So that clunk was that copper washer falling down to the bottom of our bucket here. So you guys remind me, I need to pull that out of there and reuse it. And we're going to check that washer, make sure it's still in good shape. Well, she's just about done draining, and you can look right here on my graduated bucket. It says we got a little over almost 2.5 quarts out of the crankcase here. Now, Polaris sells these oil change kits, and it comes with surprise, right? 2 and 1/2 quarts of oil. An oil filter, and it looks like, oh, a new copper washer. So I don't have to go digging in that bucket to find that copper washer after all. There we go. Well, there you go. So, you know, I'm not normally a stickler for name brand, let's say, but in the case of something like this, it's still under warranty, and we're gonna give good service records, and so we're gonna use the manufacturer's specified oil, the manufacturer's specified gear lube as well. That way they can't say, if there's ever a problem, that we didn't maintain it correctly. All right, well, there we go. So she's done draining out. I've got my drain plug ready and my brand new copper washer. We're gonna go ahead and put that up in here. Get her started by hand so that you know you're not cross-threading. Always start every fastener by hand. And we'll go ahead and retighten this thing up. Now, I think the torque spec on this is something like 20 foot-pounds. Not very much. Just really snug, okay, guys? And that's job done here. We'll just wipe off a little bit of this oil residue, and then we'll go ahead and tackle our oil filter. You know, I love this lift. But you don't have to have a lift. You can do this on jack stands in your own driveway. Good thing about these these side-by-sides is oftentimes that there's enough room underneath them. You can just shimmy your way right underneath there and do all of these happy little things. Well, now that the oil's all drained out, we're going to go ahead and get to this oil filter. So come take a look. So you can see here, we're right in the engine bay, and right on the back side of the cab, we got this heat shield. And if you just fold that up nice and easy like that, and look right down here, guys, here's where our oil filter lives. I've got my finger on it. And so that's the original oil filter. It's got 100 hours on it, and right there. And we got to get our hand in there, and we got to spin that thing off of there. Now, they're not supposed to be put on very tight, but that doesn't mean that it didn't get tight over time. And so I'm going to see if I can twist it off by hand and get lucky. No, it doesn't look that way. So I'm going to have to go ahead and get some sort of a tool to grab hold of that thing and turn it. Well, I found us a tool that's going to work to get that thing off of there. I got a really big set of channel locks here, and so we're going to snake them down right on top here, and you can see. Maybe look down through there. I don't know. Can you see from there? No? All right, come look down from up here. And you can see now that I've got that on there. All you got to do is just get a little bit of a bite of it and just turn it enough to where you can start to turn it by hand. So there we go. Okay, so come take a look. All right, so now I just broke it loose and I can turn that by hand. But before I do that, and before you go and do it, I want you to get you a rag, some kind, and put it underneath there. Matter of fact, I'm going to get a different kind. Now, before we take that oil filter off, I'm going to put one of these absorbent mats underneath it, because of where it's at and the way it's positioned, as soon as I break that thing loose, oil is going to drain all over the engine and the engine bay and then the belly pan and all over my floor. So you can just get this thing snaked down in here underneath where that oil filter is, and it'll catch the majority of that mess. I'll get it in position. That way you can take a look. There you go. You see that? I've got that underneath there. Now, as I spin this thing off, all of that absorbent mat's going to pick up any of that nasty oil that tries to leak out. How many turns does it take to get the Polaris oil filter off? 1, 2. Those of you guys that remember that old commercial about licking the Tootsie Roll Pop will appreciate that. Oh, there we go. I don't know how many turns that was, maybe 20 or so. But we got her out of there, and look at that. Look inside of there. You see that? It's still chock full of oil. And the other thing you want to look for is make sure that this outer ring right here, this rubber sealing washer, make sure that that comes off with this oil filter, because sometimes that thing can get stuck to the engine, and you don't want that to happen. All right, we got our old oil filter off, and we got the new Polaris oil filter that came with our kit, and we want to do a couple of things before we put this on. First thing I want to do is I'm going to take a rag, and I'm going to come down here, and I know you can't see real good, but what I'm doing is I'm cleaning the sealing surface where this thing is going to go, just in case there's a little bit of dirt or anything like that. And then you want to get just a little bit of that clean oil, and you want to get that, smear that clean oil on this O-ring right here. What that does is it allows it to slide better and seal better up in once you start screwing it up into place. All you got to do is, just like you took it off, just like when we took it off, just get it in there, start turning it, and you'll feel it grab. You want to make sure you don't get your rag caught in between it and the engine. There we go. Just tighten this thing up. Once it gets snug up against the engine, you just want to get it as tight as you can with your hand. You don't want to use any tools to tighten this thing on. There it goes. It's snug against the engine, and I'm just going to turn it as much as I can by hand. There we go. And that's all. That's done. Look at that. We caught a little bit of that oil trying to drizzle out, didn't we? We got the oil drain, oil filter replaced. Now, only now, can we replace the oil. And so we got the oil from our kit, came with 2.5 quarts of this PS4 0W50 synthetic oil. And we're going to put it into the crankcase right here. And you're going to want to get yourself a funnel of some kind. You just undo that right there and You notice right around here how dirty that is? You want to be careful not to knock any of that dirt down inside of there. Oh, and by the way, look down in there. You can see parts of the camshaft and everything, and you can see how clean it may be inside of there. We'll go ahead and put our filter or our funnel in place and start pouring our oil. Feel like a bartender making a really nice mixed drink. You ever see them do that crazy thing where they just go as high as they can? Again, we're just having fun. We're just having a good time here. It just keeps the joy in wrenching. Isn't that cute? They give us a little baby bottle, half a quart. So we drain 2.5 quarts. We put 2 quarts in. Time for that last quart. You notice how these bottles are shaped? They're shaped that way so that you can pour it. You can tip that bottle all the way almost horizontal before it starts pouring out. See, if I was to turn it the other way, it starts trying to pour out way before we get horizontal. So that's why it's designed that way, so that you can get really close to the opening before it starts coming out. Oh yeah, good. Now let's get rid of this funnel here. I wanted to show you, you see that cap? It's got a nice O-ring on it. You want to inspect that, make sure that's nice and in place. There's no splits in it. It's not missing. There's not any dirt or anything like that on it. And then also, you want to be careful, again, we don't knock any of this dirt inside of the engine. So you might want to clean up this sealing area right here and even get some of that stuff from around there and get it out of the way. Nice and clean. Don't need any dirt inside the engine. That's not good for it. There we go. Good and clean. Go ahead and put this back on. There we go. That is the oil. We got the engine oil done. Now it's time to tackle our front differential, or demand drive unit, they call it on this machine. So all you're going to need for that is to drain the fluid out of it and refill the fluid. Pretty simple, huh, guys? And to do that, you're going to need an 8mm hex. See that? Needs to be an 8mm. So the oil drain plug was a 6mm. Now the front differential, and then we're going to attack the transmission, you're going to need an 8mm. And I've got a really long extension because come look where we got to go. This is our fill plug right here. And so I need this real long extension so that we can get all the way back over here to where we can turn that fill plug. You always want to break your fill plug loose first when you're working on something that you're draining. That way you know that you'll be able to get that fill plug out to refill it after you drain it out. Now let me show you where the drain plug's at. Right underneath here is where our drain plug is. And so this is where we're going to put our 8mm to drain it out. Time to get that drain plug out. So we'll get up in there. And these things aren't on there very tight. I'll go ahead and remove my wrench and turn it by hand now. Ooh, almost dropped it. There we go. And get my drain plug ready. Drain pan ready. Sorry. All right. There we go. And I'm going to see if I can't move my hand fast enough. Am I quick enough to not get dirty? Ooh, not too shabby. Ooh, look at that. Look how greasy and grimy and dirty that is. And again, this only has 100 hours on it. So here's our drain plug. And if you notice, this drain plug right here on the end, it's got a magnet. Oh, let me see if I can wipe off half of it. Look at that. You see, this magnet is covered in really, really fine metallic shavings. And that's the gears wearing inside of the differential. Now, those metallic shavings that we're seeing right there, that's normal. What you don't want to see is big chunks of gear and teeth and things like that. So this one's in good shape. We can go ahead and put this, once it's done draining, we can put this back in, and then we'll fill it up from the drain hole on the side. All right, she's done draining, so we'll go ahead and get our drain plug installed again. Get her in there. Again, these drain plugs, they only got to be tightened up to about 20 foot-pounds, so not a whole lot of force to get them to go back where they were. There we go. You'll feel it get nice and snug. Clean off the area, and now we can refill it. All right, so like I like to do, I try to catch it in a bucket to see how much came out, and it's not even hardly registering. You can see when I tilt it up, but look at what we got. Look at all that metallic sheen. Kind of looks like a pearl paint, doesn't it? It's pretty, but it's dirty. All right, so let's get in here and get that fill plug out. Again, 8mm. Once you break it loose, it should come out pretty easy. You won't, but be careful not to drop it or lose it. There we go. All right. And you can see, here's the fill plug. It doesn't have that magnet on it. We'll put this to the side, and we need to fill it back up. So filling this thing back up is a little bit of a tricky thing. And so the method that I'm going to use is I've got this quart-size container here with a pump on it, with a hose, and I'm going to put this hose inside of our fill hole here, and I'm going to pump it in there. But if you don't have one of these, you can use a funnel with a hose on it, and put the funnel up here or in front of the vehicle and try to snake that hose down into there. And you want to fill this thing up until the gear oil starts to ooze out of the bottom of that fill hole, okay? Now the manufacturer says that's a little over 9 ounces, so not very much. A little over 9 ounces. So let's see how many pumps it takes anyways. We're going to stick this hose in there, and we're going to pump this demand drive fluid into our demand drive. And we're just watching until it starts to drizzle out the bottom of that hole. And it doesn't take much. I'm going to do very slowly because I don't want to make a big mess. Once it comes out of that hole, you know you're full. And 9 ounces is not very much. 16 ounces is half of a quart. So 9 ounces is a little over half of that. A quarter of a quart or so. So I put about a quarter of a quart into this jug here, and then I can see, and maybe you can too, look down in there. You see that liquid level starting to come up inside of there? Oh, we're getting real close now. There it is. It's at the bottom of the hole. I'm going to give it one more pump. You see it starting to come out? There it goes. So that is full now. Now we can go back in with our fill plug and just line it up there. Take your time with this. You don't want to cross thread these things. You'll feel it. It'll grab. Go in there nice and easy. Nice and easy. Now let's get it tightened up. Again, these fill plugs don't have to be tightened very much. Just about 20 foot-pounds is all you need. 20 foot-pounds is not even an ooga-dooga. Just snug. There we go. That one is done. Whew, that was pretty fast, huh? So we got the front differential, we got the engine oil done. Now the last thing we need to do as part of this 100-hour service is change the transmission fluid. So let me show you where we do that. So the transmission sits right here behind the engine, drives the back wheels, and if you notice right up here, that's where our drain plug is. Let me show you. And again, we're going to go in there with our friend, the 8mm hex, and we're going to break that loose. Just like that. There's your drain plug, or your fill plug. Sorry, that's the fill plug. Now let me show you under here. Here's where our drain plug lives. And it's a gold color, but it also, once again, is an 8mm. So that's where we're going to go to crack loose that drain plug. Let me get our drain pan ready. All right, let's drain this sucker. I got my pan ready. Take off our drain plug. Real fast. There we go. Oh, look at that. Glug, 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 glug. Notice how it's glug, glug, glugging like that? That's because I didn't take the fill plug out. If I take that fill plug out and then remove this drain plug, then it would gush out so fast. But look here on the drain plug, guys. We've got a little bit of metal filings, just like we saw on that front differential. We've got some metal filings on the transmission as well, but that's normal. That's normal. You just don't want to see big chunks. And just make sure that these O-rings are in good shape, and we'll be ready to clean this off and reuse it. Got her all cleaned off. See that magnet's nice and clean, and we'll go ahead and put it back in. Just like we took it out. Again, do this by hand so that you don't cross thread it. There we go. And then the torque spec on these plugs, I said earlier, was 20 foot-pounds. It's actually somewhere between 10 and 15 foot-pounds. 8mm hex. There we go. And clean up the area. And now we can refill this one. And for those of you that are interested in what that transmission fluid looks like, there it is. It too has that pearlescent metal flake look to it, doesn't it? So good thing we're changing these things out. So it's time to get that fill plug out now that we've drained that transmission. It's right back here. Once it cracks loose, you can get that thing out very easily just by hand. There we go. Okay. It doesn't have a magnet on it. It's just a regular plug, but you want to check that O-ring, that little black O-ring, just make sure it's in good shape. And then we're going to pump the fluid in there just like the front one. We're going to pump it in there until it starts to ooze out of that hole. And of course, the transmission fluid that we're going to use is the Polaris AGL gear case lube and transmission fluid. I just transferred it to this other bottle just because I've got this hose, and it makes it so much easier to put that hose inside of that fill plug just like that and just pump away until it's full. Now this one's got a purple color to it. The front differential was clear, but remember that lube that came out of that front differential sure wasn't clear, was it, guys? And this stuff here is going in until we start oozing out of the bottom of that hole. We got 1 quart in there, and now we'll just fill her up until she starts to drain out of the bottom of the hole there. Oh, I think we're getting close now. I'm starting to see a little bit of fluid. Oh, it's right there. There she goes. Just now starting to drain out of the bottom of that plug. Can you see it? That purple coming out? That means she's full. And it took about 1.5 quarts, guys. About 1.5 quarts. Let me get the drain plug and we'll put it back together. Now you want to clean the dirt mess off of that drain plug area. And anything that drizzled out. See, it's still trying to drizzle out just a little bit. Get that fill plug put back in place. Get her started by hand, of course. And we can tighten her up. This is 10 to 15 foot-pounds. All right. Wipe off any mess that you made. And that is job done for the transmission fluid. One more thing, before we're finished with this 100-hour service, we need to tell the machine that it's had it. So let me show you how to do that. So you just turn your key to the on position, and it lights up our dash. And over here on the right side of the dashboard, we've got a mode button. You want to push and hold that mode button down until you see options. Now you want to scroll through your options till you see service hours. And you can hit the mode button to adjust that number. And I'm going to leave it on 100, but you can adjust it up and down. And once you've adjusted it to the number that you want, you hit mode, and then you go scroll until you see exit, and then hit the mode again. And now that resets the service hours to 100. And that way, the next guy knows that this machine has already had its 100-hour service. Got the wheels back on her, and these are 3/4 inch lug nuts, and you want to torque them. These are aluminum wheels. So for the aluminum wheels, we want to torque these to 110 foot-pounds. We'll reattach our shock, and there we go. That'll do it for our 100-hour service on the Polaris Ranger 1000. You know, this was so fun and so easy to do. Guys, you can do this. You don't need this fancy lift. You can do this on the ground. But I just wanted to show you how easy and how fun it can be to do these sorts of things for yourself. Think of the money that you save. You don't need to take it to the dealer for this. You guys, if I helped you out in some way, please consider hitting that subscribe button for us. It really helps us to reach a greater audience. And I appreciate y'all's time today. So y'all have a good one, and God bless.